Crying mother dragon delivers her dying young to a human man. What he does next is unbelievable. The two sons of the planet called Prime were going down behind the mountains when everything changed for Samuel Burke. He was a simple man living a simple life on a world far from Earth. He had a small farm where he grew vegetables that could survive in the alien soil. He had machines that cleaned the air and made it safe to breathe. He had a small house made of metal and stone, built with his own hands over 3 long years. Samuel was 53 years old. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and his hands were rough from years of hard work. But those hands had once done different work. They had healed soldiers on distant battlefields. They had stitched wounds and set bones and held dying men as they took their last breaths. Samuel had been a combat medic in the Terran colonial marines for 20 years before he came to this distant world. He did not like to think about those years. He had seen too much death. He had watched friends die in his arms while he tried desperately to save them. He had made choices that still haunted his dreams. When the wars finally ended, Samuel had taken his pension and bought a one-way ticket to the farthest colony he could find. He wanted peace. He wanted quiet. He wanted to forget. Prime gave him all of those things. The planet was beautiful in a strange way, with purple grass and trees that grew sideways because of the odd gravity. The sky was orange during the day and turned deep red at sunset. Samuel had built his farm on the southern continent, where humans were allowed to settle according to the treaties with the native species. The native species were dragons. Not the dragons from old Earth stories, with their treasure hoards and their princess kidnapping. These dragons were something far more impressive. They were intelligent beings who had built a civilization long before humans learned to make fire. They had cities in the northern mountains, carved from living crystal. They had art and music and philosophy. They had welcomed the human colonists with cautious respect, allowing them to settle on the barren southern lands in exchange for access to certain minerals that humans knew how to mine. Samuel had seen the dragons flying in the distance sometimes. Great shapes moving across the orange sky, their scales catching the light of the twin suns. They were beautiful and terrifying and completely uninterested in a lonely human farmer living on the edge of nowhere. Or so Samuel had thought. The crash came without warning. One moment, Samuel was cleaning his farming tools after a long day of work. The next moment, the ground shook so hard that he fell to his knees. A sound like thunder rolled across his fields, and a cloud of purple dust rose from somewhere behind his storage buildings. Samuel grabbed the emergency kit he always kept by the door. Old habits died hard, and a combat medic never went anywhere without basic medical supplies. He ran toward the crash site, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind racing through possibilities. A meteor strike, a crashed shuttle, some kind of earthquake. He was not prepared for what he found. She was enormous. Even lying on her side in the crater her landing had created, she was bigger than his entire house. Her body stretched at least 60 meters from her great horned head to the tip of her tail. Her scales were the color of a deep purple sunset mixed with the blue of a midnight sky, and they would have been beautiful if they were not covered in blood. The dragon had been in a battle. Samuel could see that immediately. His trained eyes picked out the burn marks from energy weapons, the deep gashes from claws or blades, the places where scales had been torn away to reveal the raw flesh beneath. One of her wings was bent at an angle that made Samuel wince. The other wing had holes burned through the membrane. But the dragon was not dead. Her great chest rose and fell with labored breaths, and her eyes were open. Those eyes were gold, bright and intelligent, and they were looking directly at Samuel as he approached. And those eyes were crying. Samuel had seen many strange things in his life. He had walked on worlds where the rain fell upward and the rivers ran with liquid metal. He had met aliens who communicated through color changes and others who spoke in mathematical equations. But he had never seen anything cry quite like this dragon was crying. Great tears, each one the size of his fist, rolled down her scaled face and dripped onto the purple grass. Samuel stopped walking. He stood very still, his medical kit hanging forgotten from his hand. The translation implant in his head was working hard, trying to make sense of the low, rumbling sounds the dragon was making. After a moment, words began to form. "Human," the dragon said, and her voice was like stones grinding together, deep and rough with pain. "Human, please, please help." Samuel had learned many things in his years as a soldier. He had learned that the universe was a dangerous place. He had learned that trust was a rare and precious thing. He had learned that sometimes the safest choice was to walk away from trouble. He walked forward. "I am here," Samuel said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I am listening. Tell me what happened." The dragon tried to move, and a sound of pure agony escaped her throat. She managed to say. "The raiders. They came to our nesting grounds. They wanted our eggs, our children. They sell them to collectors across the galaxy, living curiosities for rich creatures to display." Samuel felt his stomach turn. He knew about everyone in the colonies knew about them. They were beings who raided settlements and ships, taking whatever they could sell on the black markets of 100 worlds. They had attacked human colonies before. They showed no mercy and expected none in return. "We fought them," the dragon continued. "We drove them away, but not before they hurt so many of us, not before they killed." She could not finish the sentence. More tears fell from her golden eyes. It was then that Samuel noticed what the dragon was holding. Cradled against her chest, protected by her forelegs even as she lay dying, was something small, something that made weak, pitiful sounds, something that was moving. "Your child," Samuel said. It was not a question. "My daughter," the dragon confirmed. "My last daughter. Her sisters did not survive. Her father did not survive. She is all that remains of my family, all that remains of my line, and she is dying, human. She is dying, and I cannot save her." The dragon shifted her great body, crying out in pain as she did so. But she forced herself to extend her forelegs towards Samuel, opening them to reveal the tiny creature within. The hatchling was no bigger than a house cat. Her scales were pale, almost white, with just hints of the purple and blue coloring she might develop as she grew. One of her tiny wings hung at a bad angle, clearly broken. There were burns across her side where an energy weapon had struck her, but worst of all was the way she was breathing. Shallow, rapid, irregular. The breathing of a creature whose insides were damaged in ways that could not be seen from the outside. "I know what you were," the dragon said, her voice growing weaker. "Before you came to this world, before you became a farmer, the other humans speak of you sometimes. They say you were a healer of warriors." Samuel stared at the tiny dragon, his mind racing. "That was a long time ago, and I healed humans. I do not know anything about dragon bodies. I do not know where your organs are or how your blood works or what medicines might help or hurt. I could kill your daughter just as easily as save her." "You could," the dragon agreed. "But if you do nothing, she will certainly die. Our healers are in the northern mountains. It would take me 3 days to fly there, and I cannot fly at all. I would not survive the journey. She would not survive the journey. You are her only hope, human. You are my only hope." Samuel looked at the dying dragon. He looked at the tiny hatchling in her claws. He thought about all the reasons he should refuse. He was not a doctor anymore. He had no training in alien medicine. He had come to this world specifically to get away from the responsibility of holding lives in his hands. But then he thought about something else. He thought about a promise he had made to himself long ago, in a hospital tent on a burning world, holding the hand of a young soldier who would not see another sunrise. He had promised that he would never turn away from someone who needed help. He had promised that he would always try, even when trying seemed hopeless, even when trying meant risking everything. He had broken many promises in his life. He had done many things he was not proud of, but this promise, this one thing, he had always kept. "I will need your help," Samuel said, and he watched hope kindle in the dragon's golden eyes. "I need you to tell me everything about your daughter's body, where her organs are, how her blood works, everything. And I need you to stay alive long enough to tell me." "I will try," the dragon said. "I will try with everything I have." Samuel reached out and carefully, so carefully, took the tiny hatchling from her mother's claws. The little creature weighed almost nothing. She was warm against his chest, warmer than any human would be, and he could feel her 3 hearts beating in rapid, uneven rhythms. "What is her name?" Samuel asked. The mother said, "Her name is, and my name is. I am a High Mother of the Crystal Mountain clan. If you save my daughter human, my clan will owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Samuel was already walking toward his house, the hatchling cradled against him, his mind switching into the mode it had not used in years. The mode of a combat medic facing an impossible situation. "I do not want payment," he said over his shoulder. "I just want to help. Now come on, we have work to do." Getting to move was not easy. The great dragon had to drag herself across the ground, leaving a trail of blood behind her. Every movement caused her obvious agony, but she never complained. She simply gritted her teeth and kept moving, her eyes fixed on the tiny form in Samuel's arms. Samuel's medical bay was small. It was designed for 1 human patient at a time, with basic equipment for treating injuries and illnesses. It was absolutely not designed for treating aliens, especially aliens whose biology was completely different from anything he had ever studied. But Samuel Burke had not survived 30 years in the colonial Marines by accepting limitations. He laid on the examination table, which he had quickly covered with thermal blankets to maintain her body heat. His scanning equipment was already running, trying to make sense of the readings it was getting from her alien body. The results were confusing, but with guidance, Samuel began to understand what he was seeing. 3 hearts, he muttered, studying the display. "She has 3 hearts arranged in a triangle. One of them is damaged, this one here on the left side." "The secondary heart," confirmed. She had positioned her massive head outside the medical bay window, watching everything Samuel did. "It controls blood flow to the wings and tail. If it fails completely, she will not survive." "The energy blast," Samuel said, tracing the path of the injury on his scanner. "It did not just burn her skin. The shockwave traveled through her body and damaged the heart wall. She is bleeding internally. The heart is filling with blood that should not be there." "Can you fix it?" asked, and Samuel could hear the desperate hope in her voice. "I do not know," Samuel admitted. "I have never done surgery on a dragon before. I have never even seen the inside of a dragon before. I could make mistakes. I could miss something important. I could." "You could try," interrupted him. "That is all I ask. That is all anyone can ask. Please, Samuel Burke, try." Samuel looked at the tiny hatchling on his table, had opened her eyes at some point, and they were the same gold as her mother's. They looked up at Samuel with an expression that he could not read, but that seemed to contain something like trust. This creature, this baby, did not know that he might fail her. She only knew that he was there, trying to help. "All right," Samuel said, "tell me everything." The surgery lasted for 18 hours. Samuel worked with tools that were never designed for this purpose. His surgical lasers had to be recalibrated again and again to work at the temperatures that described. His medications had to be modified using compounds from his mining equipment, mixed with elements from the blood that donated despite her own weakened state. His scanners had to be to interpret dragon biology, a process that involved describing her internal organs, while Samuel tried to match her descriptions to what he was seeing. It was impossible work. It was ridiculous work. It was work that no trained doctor would have attempted without years of study and proper equipment and a full surgical team. Samuel did it alone, with nothing but his experience and his determination, and the guidance of a dying mother who refused to leave her daughter's side. The first challenge was the bleeding. Secondary heart was filling with blood from a tear in the heart wall, and that pressure was making it harder for the heart to beat. Samuel had to drain the blood, repair the tear, and make sure that the heart could resume normal function, all without damaging the delicate tissues around it. Her blood is different from human blood, explained as Samuel prepared his instruments. It contains copper, not iron. It must be kept at a specific temperature or it cannot carry oxygen. Too cold and it becomes thick and slow. Too hot and it breaks down. Samuel nodded, adjusting the temperature controls on his surgical field. What temperature exactly? In human measurements, approximately 42 degrees. That was higher than human body temperature, but not impossibly so. Samuel recalibrated his heating elements and began the delicate work of opening the hatchling's chest. What he found inside was both familiar and completely alien. The organs were arranged differently than in a human body, with the three hearts forming a central cluster surrounded by layers of protective tissue. The lungs were smaller than Samuel expected, designed for efficient oxygen extraction rather than large volumes of air. The digestive system was shorter and simpler, optimized for processing the minerals and metals that dragons needed for their scale growth. There, Samuel said, spotting the damaged secondary heart. I can see the tear. It is about 2 centimeters long, running along the upper wall. Can you repair it? Asked. I think so, but I need to stop the bleeding first, and I do not know if human clotting agents will work on her blood. They will not, said, but I can tell you how to make something that will. You need mineral dust from the ground outside, the kind that sparkles in the sunlight. Mix it with the liquid from the blue plants that grow near your water collector, and add a small amount of my blood. Samuel did not ask how new this would work. He simply gathered the materials and created the mixture as she described. When he applied it to the tear and heart, the bleeding stopped almost immediately. It worked, Samuel breathed, relief flooding through him. It worked, agreed. Now you must seal the tear permanently. Use your smallest laser at the lowest setting. The tissue will bond together if you heat it carefully. The repair work was delicate beyond anything Samuel had ever attempted. He worked with magnifying equipment designed for microelectronics, adjusting his laser to the precise temperature that 1 degree too hot, and he would burn the heart tissue beyond repair. 1 degree too cold, and the seal would not hold. His hands were steady. They had always been steady, even in the worst situations. It was one of the things that had made him such a good combat medic. While other soldiers shook with fear or adrenaline, Samuel's hands remained calm and precise. The tear sealed slowly, the edges bonding together under the careful application of heat. Samuel watched his scanner, monitoring vital signs. Her secondary heart, freed from the pressure of excess blood, began to beat more regularly. The heart is working better, Samuel announced. But there is still damage to her lungs. The shockwave caused bruising, and there may be small tears in the lung tissue. The lungs will heal on their own, said. Lung tissue regenerates quickly, but only if she survives long enough for the healing to happen. What else does she need? Her wing is broken. The bone must be set or it will heal wrong and she will never fly. Samuel nodded and moved to examine the tiny broken wing. The bone was thin and hollow, almost like a bird's bone, but reinforced with deposits of a mineral that sparkled in the light of his examination lamp. Said when Samuel described what he was seeing, "It grows within our bones and makes them strong. Her deposits are not yet fully developed because she is young, so her bones break more easily, but they also heal more quickly." Samuel set the bone with gentle precision, using tiny splints that he fashioned from sterile metal strips. He wrapped the wing carefully, making sure that the bone was aligned perfectly. If he got this wrong, would be crippled for life. The wing is set, he said finally. What else? Her burns need treatment. The energy weapon damaged not just her scales but the skin beneath. If infection sets in, she will not survive. Samuel cleaned the burns carefully, applying a modified version of the same compound he had used to stop the internal bleeding. The mixture seemed to have antiseptic properties as well as clotting properties, and confirmed that it would help prevent infection. "Now," Samuel said, stepping back from the table for the first time in hours, "we wait." But he did not really wait. He monitored constantly, checking her vital signs every few minutes, watching for any sign of complications. He adjusted the temperature of her environment. He administered fluids through a tiny intravenous line he had improvised from human medical supplies. He talked to her, even though he did not know if she could understand him. "You are going to be okay," he told her, his voice soft. "Your mother is right outside and she is going to be okay too. You just need to hold on. You just need to keep fighting." Looked up at him with those golden eyes. She was too weak to move, but her eyes followed him wherever he went. And sometimes, when Samuel spoke to her, she made a small sound. It was not quite a chirp and not quite a purr. It was something in between, something that seemed to communicate trust and hope and gratitude all at once. The night passed slowly. Samuel allowed himself short breaks to drink water and eat energy bars, but he never left the medical bay for more than a few minutes. Remained at the window, her own injuries slowly worsening as she refused to seek treatment for herself. "You need medical attention too," Samuel told her during one of his breaks. "Those wounds will become infected if you do not treat them." "I will not leave my daughter," said simply. "Then at least let me help you. I can treat your wounds through the window." Considered this for a moment, then nodded. Samuel gathered his supplies and went outside, climbing up onto a storage crate so he could reach her injuries. The work was crude compared to the delicate surgery he had performed on, but it was enough. He cleaned her wounds, applied the healing compound, and bandaged the worst of the damage. "Thank you," said when he was finished. "You should rest," Samuel told her. "Is stable for now. You need to save your strength." "I will rest when my daughter is well." Samuel recognized the words. They were the same words he had used 1,000 times in his military career. He knew there was no point in arguing. Dawn came, and with it, the first signs of improvement. His breathing became steadier. Her hearts fell into a more regular rhythm. The color began to return to her pale scales, hints of purple and blue appearing like flowers blooming in spring. "She is getting stronger," Samuel said, and he could not keep the relief out of his voice. "She is," agreed, "because of you. I just did what any healer would do." "No," said firmly. "You did what no healer has ever done. You saved a child despite having no knowledge of our bodies. You worked through the night despite having no reason to help us. You risked your own for a creature that is not of your kind." Samuel did not know what to say to that. He turned back to his patient, checking her vital signs again. "Why?" asked. "Why would you do this for us? Your people and my people have always kept our distance. We do not trust each other. We do not understand each other. And yet here you are, saving my daughter's life as if she were your own child." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the question, really thought about it, trying to find an answer that was true. "When I was in the war," he said finally, "I saw a lot of death. I saw humans killing other humans for reasons that made no sense. I saw people who should have been friends trying to destroy each other because they had been told to. And I realized something. I realized that most of the suffering in the universe happens because people stop seeing each other as people. They see enemies or obstacles or things, not living creatures with hopes and fears and families." He turned to look at through the window. "When you came to me last night, you were not an alien or a dragon or a potential threat. You were a mother who was watching her child die and would do anything to save her. I have seen that expression on the faces of 1,000 human mothers. I could not turn away from it." Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "Among my people, there is a word for what you have done. The closest translation in your language would be something like sacred bond. When one being saves the life of another at great personal risk, a connection is formed between them, a connection that can never be broken. I did not do it for a connection, Samuel said. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I know, said. That is why the connection is sacred. The second day passed and continued to improve. By the evening, she was strong enough to lift her head and look around the medical bay. Her eyes still followed Samuel wherever he went, and she made that small sound of trust and comfort whenever he came near. She has imprinted on you, said, watching her daughter's behavior. What does that mean? Children form their first bonds with those who care for them in their earliest moments. Normally, this would be their parents, but's father is dead and I was too injured to care for her. You were the one who held her. You were the one who healed her. In her mind, you are part of her family now. Samuel stared at the tiny dragon, feeling something complicated moving in his chest. I do not know how to raise a dragon. No one expects you to raise her alone, but the bond is there, whether you wanted it or not. She will always recognize you as one of her own. Samuel reached out and gently touched his head. Her scales were smooth and warm beneath his fingers. She made that chirping, purring sound and pressed into his touch like a cat seeking affection. Hello, little one, Samuel said softly. It seems like we are family now. On the third day, Samuel's communication array received an alert from the colonial authorities. A priority message, marked urgent. Attention all settlers on Prime. We have received reports of a dragon within the human settlement zone. This is a violation of the territorial accords. All citizens are advised to maintain distance and report any dragon immediately. Representatives will be dispatched to investigate and resolve the situation. Failure to comply with official directives may result in sanctions. Samuel read the message twice, then switched off the communication array. That will cause problems for you, observed. Probably, Samuel agreed. They will send people to investigate. They will ask questions. They will be very concerned about treaty violations and diplomatic incidents. You could send us away. I am strong enough to travel now as long as I go slowly. We could be gone before your officials arrive. Samuel looked at who had fallen asleep on the examination table. Her breathing was steady and her hearts were beating in perfect rhythm. The burns on her side were healing, new scales beginning to grow to replace the ones that had been lost. Her wing was still splinted, but the bone was knitting together well. She is not ready to travel, Samuel said. She needs at least another week of rest before she can handle a long journey, and you need more time to heal as well. But your people. My people can wait. Samuel's voice was firm. You came to me for help. I'm not going to throw you out before you are ready to go just because some officials might be upset. Regarded him with those ancient golden eyes. You continue to surprise me, Samuel Burke. I am a stubborn old man who does not like being told what to do. There is nothing surprising about that. Made that sound again, the one that might have been laughter. Perhaps not. But there is something surprising about a human who would risk his own standing to protect beings he met only 3 days ago. I have risked more for less, Samuel said. Now rest, you need your strength. The colonial officials arrived 2 days later. There were 3 of them, traveling in a shiny government shuttle that touched down in Samuel's eastern field. The leader was a tall woman named Director Palmer, who wore a crisp uniform and a disapproving expression. She was accompanied by 2 assistants who carried data tablets and seemed nervous about being anywhere near a dragon. Had positioned herself near Samuel's house, her massive body coiled protectively around the medical bay where was still recovering. She did not move when the shuttle landed, but her eyes tracked the humans as they approached. Mr. Burke, Director Palmer said, her voice cold and official. We received reports of a territorial accords violation at this location. I see those reports were accurate. Director, Samuel replied, keeping his voice calm. "Would you like to come inside for some coffee while we discuss the situation?" "I would like an explanation of why there is a dragon on human territory, Mr. Burke. This is a serious violation of our treaties." "She was injured," Samuel said simply. "Her nesting grounds were attacked by raiders. She came here seeking help for her daughter who was dying. I provided that help." Director Palmer's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. "You treated an alien creature, without authorization, without medical training in their biology." "I am a former combat medic. I treated her the same way I would treat any patient. I used the tools available to me and did my best to save a life." "That is not the point. The point is that you have allowed a dragon to remain in human territory for nearly a week. This could have diplomatic consequences. It could be seen as a violation of our agreements with the—" Spoke then, her deep voice rumbling through the translator. "There has been no violation. I came to this territory of my own choice, seeking help that was freely given. I bear witness that this human has acted with honor and compassion. If there are diplomatic consequences, they will be positive ones." Director Palmer turned to face the dragon, and Samuel saw her hesitate. Whatever she had expected from this encounter, it was probably not a dragon defending the human she had come to investigate. "With respect," Palmer said, choosing her words carefully, "you are not authorized to speak on behalf of the Council regarding treaty matters." "No," agreed, "but I am a High Mother of the Crystal Mountain clan. My word carries weight among my people, and I give you that word now. Samuel Burke has done nothing wrong. He has done everything right. He has shown my daughter and me a kindness that we did not expect to find among your kind." Palmer was silent for a long moment. Her assistants looked uncomfortable, unsure of how to handle this situation. Finally, the director turned back to Samuel. "You understand that I will need to file a report about this incident." "File whatever reports you need to file," Samuel said. "I did what I thought was right. I would do it again." "And the dragon, how long does she intend to remain here?" "Until her daughter is well enough to travel," answered. "A few more days at most. Then we will return to our own lands, and we will take with us stories of a human who helped when he had every reason to refuse." Director Palmer studied Samuel's face for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, her expression softened slightly. "The report will note that you provided emergency medical assistance to an injured native species," she said. "It will also note that the assistance was provided at the request of the patient and did not violate the spirit of the territorial accords. Is there anything else you would like me to include?" Samuel blinked, surprised by the sudden change in her attitude. "No, that sounds accurate." "Very well, we will take our leave. Good day, Mr. Burke, High Mother." The director and her assistants returned to their shuttle and departed. Samuel watched them go, feeling confused but relieved. "That went better than I expected," he said. "She recognized honor when she saw it," replied. "Not all of your kind are blind to such things." A week later took her first steps outside the medical bay. Her wing was still wrapped, but the bone was nearly healed. Her burns had faded to scars that would eventually be covered by new scales. Her heart's beat strong and steady. She was small and wobbly, but she was alive. And when she saw Samuel standing in the doorway, she made that chirping sound and toddled toward him on unsteady legs. Samuel knelt down to meet her, and the tiny dragon pressed her head against his chest. He could feel her 3 hearts beating, could feel the warmth of her body, could feel the trust she placed in him without reservation. "Hello, little one," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Look at you, walking on your own. Your mother must be so proud." Was indeed proud. She watched from nearby, her golden eyes shining with tears that were no longer tears of grief. "She is strong," said. "Like her father, like her sisters, but she is also kind, that she learned from you. She has been with me for only a week. She cannot have learned much." You would be surprised what a child can learn in a week, especially a child who has been through what she has been through. She has learned that not all strangers are dangerous. She has learned that help can come from unexpected places. She has learned that the universe is not as dark as it sometimes seems. Samuel looked at the little dragon, at her golden eyes so full of trust and hope. He thought about his own life, about the darkness he had seen and the darkness he had carried. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had learned something too. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I take my daughter home," said. "The healers of my clan will continue her treatment. She will grow and learn and eventually take her place among our people. And me. You will always be welcome among the Crystal Mountain clan. You will always be considered family, and when is old enough, she will come to visit you. The bond she has formed with you will not fade with time or distance." Samuel nodded slowly. He had not expected to gain a family when he came to this distant world. He had expected only peace and solitude and slow forgetting, but life had surprised him, as it so often did. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "You will," promised. "This is not an ending, Samuel Burke, it is a beginning." The next morning and prepared to leave. The great dragon had healed enough to fly, though she would have to take the journey slowly, would ride on her mother's back, nestled safely between the great wings. Samuel helped them prepare, checking bandages one final time, making sure that wounds were clean and healing properly. He gave them supplies from his own stores, medications that might help if there were complications during the journey. "Thank you," said as she prepared to take flight. "Thank you for everything." "Stay safe," Samuel replied, "both of you." Made that chirping sound and reached out with her tiny. Samuel took it gently, feeling her warmth one last time. "I will see you soon, little one," he said. "Be good for your mother." Then spread her great wings, caught the wind, and lifted into the air. Samuel watched them go, watching until they were nothing but distant specks against the orange sky. He stood there for a long time after they had disappeared, feeling the silence of his farm settle around him once more. But the silence felt different now. It was not the silence of loneliness and forgetting. It was the silence of peace, of a good deed done, of a promise kept. Samuel Burke had come to this world to escape his past. But standing there in the purple grass, watching the twin suns rise over the mountains, he realized something important. He had not escaped his past, he had redeemed it. 3 months after and departed, Samuel received a visitor. He was working in his fields when he heard the sound of wings overhead. Looking up, he saw a dragon descending toward his farm. But this dragon was not. This one was smaller, with scales of bright silver and eyes of deep green. The dragon landed gracefully in Samuel's eastern field, in almost exactly the same spot where it had crashed so many months before. But there was no crash this time. The landing was controlled and elegant. "Samuel Burke," the dragon said, her voice lighter than but still deep enough to vibrate in Samuel's chest. "I bring greetings from the Crystal Mountain clan." "Greetings received," Samuel replied, approaching the visitor. "Who do I have the honor of addressing?" "I am Speaker for the Council of High Mothers. I have been sent to deliver a message and a gift." Samuel waited, curious. "The message is this," continued. "The council has heard the story of what you did for High Mother and her daughter. They have discussed it at length. They have reached a decision." "What decision?" "The territorial accords between your people and mine have always been based on distance and separation. We allowed you to settle here, but we did not trust you. We believed that humans were dangerous, aggressive, concerned only with their own benefit. We kept apart because we feared what might happen if we came too close." Samuel nodded. He had understood this from the beginning. The dragons tolerated human presence, but they did not welcome it. "Your actions have caused the council to reconsider," said. "One human, acting alone with no benefit to himself, risked everything to save a child. This was not what we expected. This was not what we believed your kind capable of. I only did what anyone would do. No, said firmly. That is not true. Most beings would not have done what you did. Most beings would have refused to help or demanded payment or simply not cared enough to try. You cared, and that matters. The silver dragon reached into a pouch that hung from a harness around her neck. She a small object that glittered in the light of the twin suns. This is the gift, said, holding it out to Samuel. A crystal from the heart of our mountain home. It is given only to those who have earned the respect of the people. You may not understand its significance now, but you will in time. Samuel took the crystal carefully. It was warm to the touch, and deep within its facets he could see light dancing like a living thing. Thank you, he said. There is more, continued. The Council proposes a new relationship between our peoples. Not just tolerance but cooperation. Not just distance but connection. We propose to build a place where humans can work together, where your healing knowledge can combine with ours, where both of our kinds can benefit. Samuel stared at her, not sure he was understanding correctly. A place where humans and dragons work together. Is that even possible? We do not know, admitted. It has never been tried. But the Council believes it is worth attempting. They believe that if one human can save one dragon child, then perhaps more is possible, perhaps much more. And why are you telling me this? His green eyes met his with calm certainty. Because we want you to be part of it, Samuel Burke. We want you to help us build this new future. Samuel looked at the crystal in his hand, at the dragon before him, at the orange sky above. He thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The wars he had fought, the lives he had saved and lost, the loneliness that had driven him to this distant world, and the mother dragon who had come to him in desperate hope, trusting him with her dying child. I am just a farmer, he said finally. I am just an old soldier who wanted to be left alone. You are more than that, said. You proved it when you saved. You can prove it again if you choose. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. Tell the Council I accept, he said. I do not know what I can offer, but I will try. That is all I have ever done. Try. Dipped her great head in acknowledgement. Then it is agreed. The future begins here, Samuel Burke. The future begins with you. She spread her silver wings and took to the sky, leaving Samuel standing in his field with a crystal in his hand and a new purpose in his heart. For the first time in many years, Samuel Burke felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The seasons passed on Prime. The twin suns rose and set. The purple grass grew and was harvested, and Samuel Burke began the work of building something that had never existed before, a bridge between two worlds. It was not easy. There were challenges and setbacks, misunderstandings and frustrations. The humans of the colony were suspicious of closer ties with the dragons. The dragons were wary of trusting humans with their knowledge and their young. Old prejudices and fears did not disappear overnight. But slowly, gradually, things began to change. Other dragons came to visit Samuel's farm. Some were curious about the human who had saved. Others came seeking medical advice for ailments that their own healers could not cure. Samuel treated them as best he could, learning more about biology with each patient he helped. Other humans came too. Young doctors who wanted to learn about alien medicine. Engineers who saw opportunities in dragon crystal technology. Farmers who wondered if dragons might have wisdom to share about working with the land. Samuel welcomed them all. He became a kind of ambassador, though he never called himself that. He was just a man who believed that kindness could change the world, one small act at a time. And twice a year, without fail, a young dragon with purple and blue scales would fly down from the northern mountains to visit him. Grew larger with each visit, her confidence and strength increasing as she matured. But she never forgot the human who had saved her life. She never stopped making that chirping sound when she saw him, the sound that meant trust and love and family. "Father," she would call him, and Samuel would feel his heart swell with a joy he had never expected to feel again. "Daughter," he would reply, and they would spend days together, talking about everything and nothing, building a bond that transcended species and circumstance. This was not the life Samuel Burke had planned for himself. It was not the peaceful forgetting he had sought when he came to this distant world. It was something better. It was a life of purpose and connection, of healing and growing, of reaching across the gaps that divide living beings and finding common ground. It was a life that began when a crying mother dragon brought her dying daughter to a human man, and he did the only thing he knew how to do. He helped